these frameworks, they are designed by developers for developers. And therefore, they have a blind spot for some of the most important challenges that we see when it comes to getting the right work done efficiently. And those challenges are being able to collaborate and communicate between tech people and business people, and getting developers to understand and prioritize customer value over neat code and refactoring. Also getting developers to actually communicate and collaborate with each other rather than working by themselves with headphones on. So to summarize, the traditional frameworks like Scrum and SAFe are both front-loaded and complex, and they don't lead to the result that we need today. And let me just show you quickly what I mean. I took this screenshot yesterday. This is from SAFe's website. SAFe stands for Scaled Agile Framework, and this is their product. And with their own words, they say this is the minimal number of elements necessary to start using SAFe. And if you want the whole package, it looks like this. It's just too much, and it doesn't work for most teams. And it's definitely not Agile. Agile comes from the Agile Manifesto, and it's simply this: individuals and interactions over processes and tools, and responding to change over following a plan. So we want to bring Agile back.
And so both me and Victor had been working in the Agile field for over 10 years, and we saw how it was taken over by this controlling management and process nerds. And when in reality, we saw that like what the core of Agile is to get teams to work incremental and with continuous improvement. Like that's the art of Agile. Like if you can get your teams to do that, then you're doing Agile, both like on your product, like how can we incrementally improve our product, and also in your way of working. So when we looked at, okay, so but what is really, really core when it comes to getting teams to work with continuous improvement, both when we looked at the Agile Manifesto, but mainly from our own experience with many, many teams, we realized that like at the core is actually two quite simple but very powerful questions. And those questions are, what went well this period? And what will we do better next period? And the like simple process of asking these questions and then incrementally implementing the improvements that come up from asking these questions. So this process of asking the questions and then incrementally implementing improvements, this is Fractal.Work. So if you just start asking these questions every week, and then every week making a small change to how you work, over time, you will have designed the optimal way of working for your team. So if you do this, you won't need tons of Agile books and courses or to force feed any Agile playbook. You and your team will be able to create your own method. So at its core, what Fractal.Work or Fractal development is a weekly retro. So you gather your team, you have a check-in, you look at what did we achieve last week? And based on this, you do a reflection round. What did we do well this week? What worked really well? And then you do a reflection round, what will we do better next week? Not what were our problems or what are we doing bad, but what will we do better next week? And based on these reflections, you choose one improvement that you implement the next week, that you commit to implementing the next week and check out. And if you're doing this, if you have this 30-minute weekly retro and are finding one thing to improve that you implement each week or something to remove, and you do this iteratively week by week, then you're doing Fractal.Work. So what can this look like in practice? How does it look like when we've implemented this in teams? We want to share some case stories for what it can look like when we've done this in teams.
Before we share the case story this week, we're going to do an exercise.
Yes,
right?
this is true. Okay, so before we share the case story of how others do it, we want to invite you to do this exercise. So do this fractal retro. So start by, in a project that you're working on right now, what are the main things that you accomplished last week? And then based on this, answer the fractal questions. So you can write this in the chat as well, and I'll give you about a minute. So reflect on, we'll start by the first question, reflecting on last week. What did you do really well last week? So I'll give you a minute to write down all the things that you and your team did really well last week. So take a minute.
And to those of you who just joined, welcome. We just talked a little bit about the background to Fractal.Work, and now we're in an exercise. So you can just jump in and do this exercise with us. What went well last week? And just write the first things that come to mind.
And you can write them down in the chat. It doesn't have to be the whole list. You can just put things into the chat as they come up. We'll take 30 more seconds on what went well.
Congrats on the progress. Good stuff. Great interviews, good retention, got some leads, really good stuff.
Okay, so now we'll shift focus and do the second question. What can you do better next week? And try to write this again as something constructive that you can do better. So I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes with this question as well. What can you and your team do better next week?
So 30 more seconds on what you can do better next week. And again, just write what comes to mind. No blame, not much thinking.
Okay, so now that you have your list of what went well last week and what you can do better next week, from all these things, choose one thing that you want to commit to improving, removing a process, introducing a process, one thing that you want to commit to doing better or differently next week. So again, take a few moments to find that one thing. And again, don't think too much. Just what is one thing, one small change that you can make next week that you think will improve some of your pain points that you have identified. Okay, we have some great improvements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so my suggestion for you now is to copy this that you wrote in the chat and put it in your own notes somewhere, and then afterwards put a reminder in your phone a week from now, and then go back and look at this to see, now when this is fresh, this is important to you, right? And in a week from now, check back and see if you did it.
So this is Fractal.Work. You guys are already going and you're already doing it. So if you do this improvement and then by the end of next week, book in another retro, do the same thing with your team, find another improvement, and then keep improving your way of working. This is Fractal.Work. So now that you've tried it yourselves, we want to show you what this can look like in practice with some case stories of teams that we have done this method with.
Yes. So the first case I want to share with you is from a company called Dalarnia that I work with. This started off when the product owner reached out to me and said that they had a newly formed team and they needed some structure. He told me that they heard about Scrum and Agile and wanted to get started with that, but needed guidance. So they asked if I could help with this. And I said, yes, sure, but I don't think you should use Scrum. Maybe you want to try Fractal instead. And they did. So during this, the same work that you just did, in the first week, they answered good about having fun, seeing quick progress, working independently, and being motivated. And what they wanted better is to gain clarity, improving planning and prioritization to see what's going to come. And based on this feedback, I proposed a kind of sprint planning from Scrum, a session for the upcoming week where we would take the whole team and define and prioritize tasks before diving into building the solutions. And during the next week, we did the same thing again. And then the good was our improved collaboration over the week and more clear priorities. And what they wanted to do better was that some of them hit roadblocks midweek. And they wanted to sync up more so that people didn't get stuck. And to address this, we started with a simple version of a daily stand-up, where the main question was, what do I need to move forward today? And fast forward 6 weeks, and it was time for me to leave the team. Then we took a moment to summarize the journey we went through, and we did the Fractal questions, but on the whole 6-week period instead. And doing this, the team saw all the progress that they made and how far they've come. And I think this is where it really clicked for them. They were super happy and proud of what they've done when they saw it in this way. And they really celebrated the Fractal framework for teaching them how to collaborate more and how to deliver faster. And their increased velocity we measured to be about 30 to 50%, which is huge. And I think the main point to take away from this is that the culture of continuous improvement grows really quickly among people, because when you give them the right tools, the hunger for improvement, it spreads like a wildfire.
And the second story that we want to share is from our time at Footway. So Victor and I did Fractal.Work at Footway for over 3 years. And in the beginning, the issues or pain points that came up were similar to the ones at Minset of Dalarnia. But the more we worked, the more fine-tuned the problems got. So one example of a pain point is a bit down the line. A pain point that came up is that it was hard to get an overview of ongoing development and to prioritize. So we implemented a Kanban board. Another example, a bit later, was that the developers were experiencing that the tasks weren't well defined enough. So even if they had defined the tasks themselves, when it was time to actually do them, they still felt too vague to actually take action on. So the solution that we implemented then was to start using user stories. And even further down the road, the main pain point was that we kept overestimating our sprints. So we kept thinking that we could do more than we actually could, and we kept missing important deadlines. So then the solution that we implemented was story points. And as you can see here, the patterns and the solutions that usually emerge are very similar to common agile methodologies like Scrum. But the difference here is that with Fractal.Work, you make sure that you only implement the tools and the processes that you actually need. And also, as a team member, I'll be much more motivated to use a tool or a process when A, I've experienced the pain point, and B, I've been part of choosing the tool or the solution myself. So simply put, Fractal.Work is a way to refine your work over time by adding and removing stuff as the needs arise.
Yeah. And the core of Fractal.Work is this weekly ritual with the fractal questions, but that's not all. Not as tangible, but equally important is the mindset we have when we're doing this work. So we have a few core principles that we follow when we do Fractal.Work, and they are, we start simple and be consistent. We start with the minimum change possible, and we're continuously working on improving from there over time. And the second is we only solve existing problems. So we never ever implement a process until it's a big pain point. And this is crucial. This saves us a lot of time and effort because we have more time on focusing on doing the actual work. The third one is we celebrate learnings. We don't do blame games. We focus on solutions going forward. We don't dwell on what went wrong. And the last one is work out loud. And this is about transparency. We communicate in open channels, and we make valuable information accessible for everyone so that everyone has the information they need to do their best work. And we have found that these principles are key for success in teamwork and in product development and project management. These principles gives us the playfulness to try new things and the integrity to focus on what is important. It also gives us the accountability to respond when something is needed. And we could definitely talk more about this, about mindsets, but I hope this is enough to give you a sense of our mindsets and how we think, and maybe it sparked an interest in you to learn more about why mindset and principles are so important.
And apart from these two fractal questions and doing this weekly retro with the mindset that Victor just went through, like the only other holy tool of Fractal.Work is the team code of conduct. Because this code of conduct is like the heart of your team. It's the place where you gather all the processes, rituals, and tools that your team has committed to and are using. And it's not necessary to have a code of conduct, a document like this, to get started, but it becomes very useful later on in your iterative work. And the code of conduct is a living document that we change as needs arise. So seeing this living document really supports this growth mindset and like a playful approach to changes. Because when it keeps changing, the team and you know that nothing is forever and that everything is an experiment. And what you'll realize over time is, and in the beginning, when you're finding your way of work, there'll be a lot of changes. But the longer you go and the more you refine your way of work, the changes occur less frequency and there'll be less and less changes that are needed. Okay, so now we've given you everything that you need to do Fractal.Work, and how you get started is simply to book in your first 30-minute Fractal Retro. So gather your team, look in your calendar, find a 30-minute slot, either connected to a meeting you already have or book a new meeting. and do this weekly retro with the 2 questions, and have it as a recurring meeting every week. And the second, if you're really pro, you can write your first draft of your code of conduct, and that is writing down how you're actually working, not how you wished you would be working or how you should be working, but what are the things, what routines, processes, and tools have you committed to and are using in your team. So that's it. That's what you need to do to get started with Fractal.Work. And with what we have given you, you have everything you need to be doing Fractal.Work on your own. So we really just encourage you to get out there and start iterating. But as you might understand, some of you thought about, is that one of the most important success factors of Fractal.Work is, of course, to choose a good solution to solve your identified pain point every week. And Victor and I have been working with teams for over 10 years, and we've seen what works. So to make it easier for you and to spare you from safe courses and Googling and reading all the books, we've gathered all the best practice tools in a toolbox and also mapped them to the most common needs. So in your retros, when a pain point arises, you can go to the toolbox and find different suggestions of best practices that solves that pain point. So let's take a moment to get like a helicopter view of what we've shared so far. So in its core, Fractal.Work is the Fractal retro with these 2 questions. What went well this period? What will we do better next period? And ask these questions each week with the mindset that Victor went through. And to your help, there's this toolbox with the code of conduct that is the heart, that summarizes all the processes that you have, and also suggestions of other best practice tools. And so some of you might be wondering now, why do we call this Fractal.Work? And the reason that we call it fractal is that we realize that in all teams that do these iterations, fractal patterns emerge. So one fractal pattern is the pattern of people and product. It emerges that you want to ask these questions: what did we do well and what will we do better on the product? And that's quite common in Agile, like what features are working, what features aren't, how do we make the product better for the customer? But also the pattern of doing it on people or how you're working. So in our processes, what worked well and what should we do better? Another fractal pattern is the time aspect. So almost all teams, when they're doing these weekly retros, the need comes up to do some kind of daily stand-up. And when you've been doing these weekly retros for even longer, say 1 or 2 months, the need comes up to also do a monthly or bi-monthly meeting or session, ask these questions on a bigger scope, both to get a helicopter view, but also to start iterating more aggregately. And when you start feedback looping your feedback loops that you start gaining the really powerful insights. But the key here is that the key word is that these fractal patterns emerge. So if you try to design them beforehand, then you'll just end up in Safe or Scrum, and you'll end up with patterns that don't actually work for your team. So I'm only sharing these fractal patterns to give you like a sneak peek of the fractal beauty that will emerge if you do these iterations. So what you need to focus on now is to get started and to just have this weekly habit of asking these 2 questions. What went well this period? What will we do better next period? Choose something to implement and do that every week.
Yeah. And if you're really serious about getting started, serious about improving the way your team collaborates, communicates, and deliver together, we would be happy to help you. Because we know from experience that getting started with a new habit is the hardest part. Even a small change can be hard to implement. And when you do get started, the second hard part with this is to get into the habit of continuous improvement, because this is a new mindset for most people, and it takes a little while to get used to. But when you've done this for a couple of weeks, then it really sticks. So it can be useful to have someone to guide you through this in the beginning. And we learned that with our help, this takes about 6 weeks for the team to become self-sufficient in doing the Fractal work. And we really want you to succeed with this. So therefore, we created a new offer, and it's a Get Started with Fractal program. We call it Fractal Done With You Intensive. And it's designed to make it very easy for you to get started with Fractal work. It's a 6-week program where Fanny and I coach you and guide you into get up and running. And it goes like this. We start off with a 1-hour workshop, much like this one that we're giving you now, to give the whole team the basics and give you the same language and vocabulary and mindset to get started. And then we join you on the weekly Fractal retros. In the beginning, we do the facilitation, and then as the weeks go, we do more of coaching and helping you do it yourself. So at the end of these 6 weeks, you will be ready to run Fractal yourself. And you'll also get between the sessions, between the weeks, we'll give you support over email and chat so you can get going faster. And you'll also get access to the Fractal toolbox that Fanny and I mentioned. And so far, the teams that we have done this with, they really love it. They have increased motivation and general well-being, as well as improved communication and collaboration. And they developed this habit of continuous improvement. They've also increased their development speed or velocity for development teams with a minimum of 30%, which is huge. For a 5-people team, that translates to a reduced development cost of 135,000 kroners because your project gets done faster. And we want to help you get this too. Therefore, we're offering this Fractal Intensive for 60,000 kroners. And it's a one-time fixed fee that you will you pay to get our service to help you get started with Fractal work. And we're going to do everything that's needed to make this work for you. And since we know this works, we're giving you the satisfaction guaranteed, which means that we only charge you when value is delivered. You only need to pay at the end of the program if your team perceives significant increase in productivity and collaboration. So if you for any reason are not content, we won't charge you, and you will retain all the work and the knowledge that we gave you during the program for free. So this means that there's no financial risk for you in getting started with our help. And we really hope this sounds good to you. And because we want to support as many teams as possible with Fractal work, we are eager to test this intensive program and see if this is the best way to do it. So therefore, we're offering you as pioneers to try this program at a very reduced price. So we're going to give the first 5 customers who sign up for this, not 60,000 kroners, but the symbolic price of 12,000 kroners. And to get this offer, simply send us an email, and this offer is available until the end of this week, or until the first 5 customers sign up. So that's the Fractal Intensive. We hope this sounds good, and we would be very glad to get started with you guys. So going forward, we're going to talk about the mission, why we're doing this at all. So our mission with Fractal.Work is to support millions of people in building great products with integrity, passion, and ease. The world really needs great people focused on solving important problems. And my passion is to be here for the doers. I believe that great things comes from collaborating and building things together. And I want to make sure that people have the tools and mindset to accomplish their goals. And not from fear, stress, or scarcity, but from integrity, passion, and ease. And I believe that Fractal.Work is the way to get there. So this is our contribution, and we hope that it will serve you. Thank you so much. I hope that this presentation has been valuable for you. Your attention and time is the most valuable asset you have. And I hope this was well spent and that you got some insights and learnings from this talk. So we want to finish off with a checkout. What did you learn during this presentation? What do you like about Fractal.Work? What are you taking with you from this workshop? Please share in your comments.
So we're starting to get some good. We have the meta level of Agile, power of micro learnings by inspiration to implement, short and frequent shared reflection meetings, confirm that weekly loops I've used is all that needed to succeed, notion of continuous improvement, the energy to focus on simple and not making things complex. Hell yes.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Thank you so much for.
And we also see some questions coming up in the chat, and we will say we'll stay, we'll close, and then we'll stay for Q&A for those who want to after.
Yeah. Yeah, and the last thing before we close is that if you want to help us spread the word about Fractal and how people can make their work easier, we would love if you copied your answer here in the chat and pasted it as a comment on this LinkedIn post that we just sent out.
Which, yeah, we'd really appreciate spreading the word and with your help making Agile great again.
Yeah, yeah. It only takes 5 seconds, and it's going to help a lot of people to hear about this, and they will also associate this with you if you are the one who tells them about it. So
be the one to make Agile great again.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was everything for us. Thanks again, like Victor said, for giving us your valuable time and attention. We'll round off here, and so if you need to go grab some lunch before your next meeting or anything, feel free to do that. Get in touch, send us an email if you want to do the Fractal Intensive. Yeah, please spread the word, and thank you very much. So let's go into the Q&A. Thank you, Andrea. Great work with this. You guys rock. Thank you. I saw one question. I don't know if you want to stay, Olena.
Yeah, so feel free to unmute yourself now,
Yeah.
and now this is an open conversation, so feel free
I
to
saw
unmute
one
yourself.
question
And
from Elena and one question from Alexander. So if you guys want to stay and unmute yourself, please go ahead and ask the question.
I can go first.
Yeah.
I mean, we were a sales agency, a consultancy, but we've adopted some Scrum light methodology in both stand-up meetings and following up on a weekly basis, simply because we think that it will help the team feel better. Performance-wise, we have had some issues in creating that cadence of accountability and putting up a scoreboard that is compelling enough. So I was just wondering if you've done this with other teams than developers, because in my view, developers now they really have a framework, maybe not working framework, but they have frameworks. But companies like us, the ones that we are catering to, they have nothing like that. They're just completely going Western on everything.
Yeah, right. And it's a really good question, and the answer is yes. We've done this with a marketing team and a management team also. That has nothing to do with code or development.
And actually, when we developed Fractal, it was in parallel with one marketing team and one developer team. And this is also where we saw, like the magnitude of this, that like, wow, this doesn't just work for developers. This habit, because again, this habit of continuous learning and improvement is what is needed in the market today, like in the business world today, with the technological development that we're seeing. Everything is changing in a really fast pace. So what has been true for technology is becoming true for most sectors and industries.
Yeah, so we've really focused on that. It's like it's about collaborations and performance rather than like product development. So it's a more general practice. It works really well for development and because they have a lot of patterns, but it works even better for marketing and business teams because, like you said, they don't have all the patterns.
Exactly, we don't have to unlearn them.
Yeah, and we have patterns that works for marketing teams and business teams.
Yeah. Second question, and then I think I'm done. There was a difference between the questions asked for Footway and the other and the ones that you are focusing on now. What did we do good last week out, or are we going to do better? As Footway was focusing on what were the pain points and what would be the solution to those. Is that because you've had Footway as a customer for a longer time, so that your process has developed with them, or is it something else?
That was probably just a trying to make it more clear for you in the presentation. During the retros, the questions that we asked was, what did we do well? What will we do better? But just to make it clear, I mean, when in the process of identifying what will we do better, you of course have to find the pain point first. But the brilliance of Fractal is to not get stuck on the problem, but to get everybody to have the growth mindset and the constructive mind. So rather than asking what problems are we having, you ask what can we do better. And this is one of the mindset things that really takes time. This is one of the things that we do as coaches, like during the first retros, people say like, oh, this is a problem, this is a problem. We have to keep coaching back. So okay, what should we do better, not what's the problem.
So to answer your question clearly, the questions are always the same and they haven't been changed. The question, it's what did we do well in the last period, and the other one is what will we do better in the coming period. And it's always these questions, and when we do it in the retro setting, we have a timer on usually 2 minutes, and we ask the first question, and then everybody gets to write as many things as they possibly can during 2 minutes, just to get away from thinking and just like having the subconscious emerge. And then we do that on the both questions. And after that, we go through the whole team and everybody gets to choose, like, this is my most important. And then when someone says they're most important, the other people can say, oh yeah, +1. So then we get like a pattern of like, not only these are a list of things, we also get a pattern of which one are more crucial. And then after that, after seeing this, we usually read back everything. Like, this is what we did last week. This is what we liked. This is what we want to do better. From this insight, what do we want to do next week?
And if I'm getting it correctly, it's always focused about on the activities. It's not on the results, right?
I don't understand. What do you mean by
as in
way of working on the product?
No, it's both. It's
both. Okay.
It's both. Yes, it's
Okay.
in this presentation we focused more on activities and people, because this is what we see that teams lack the most. They don't think about this as much. Teams usually think a lot about the product, but this is for both.
And this is what I was alluding to briefly about this fractal pattern of both people and product, that usually what emerges is, like Victor said, you have a sprint planning session or you have a sprint review, you demo your products with KPIs. In a sense, this is also what went well, showing KPIs, showing a demo. What will we do better? What will we do next week? The sprint planning. So that is the same two questions on product. That's the fractal pattern.
Okay. Yep. Thanks.
But to not start with that complicated, because then again, you're just going to be over designing your processes.
Yeah, it's just when we've done this, when I've implemented a similar thing, it's been on, focusing on what's the good news, what has been done, what are we going to focus on next, what is my accountability of that, and per person. So it's not a joint effort necessarily. It could be one person saying, this is my most important, so I'm going to do this because it's, but it's always about the activity. We've never ever, I mean, we're a sales team and we don't have any sales goals like that, because that's just an effect of what we are doing. So we're focusing on what we're doing, what we can control essentially, and the effect of it comes whether we like it or not. So we, of course, we need to have some sort of idea of what we want to achieve with our activities, but that's never a discussion for us as in what would be the result of this. It's not, because that's just a way of doing it.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. And one way to get there is that why we do the questions open from the beginning, that it's not necessarily on product or people or process, is that when you have to write as much as possible on a limited amount of time, you don't have bandwidth to categorize, so you're just going to write everything. We often see people writing, I need to take more breaks, or I didn't go to the gym, or I didn't sleep enough, stuff like that too. So everything goes, because it's like, to be able to collaborate and perform, it's a wholesome activity. Like, you need to show up with your entire self. So whatever is blocking shows up, and then depending on how important it is, we rank them and choose what to work on.
And again, let the process decide what is most important, not to.
Yeah, and for you guys who are a sales team and maybe don't have a practice of thinking about this, like, this could be issue, like this will probably, I'm predicting now, be an issue that arises. That's like, some of you might write that we're only focusing on the metrics, and then that's the key to get there. Like, okay, so we need to solve that. We're only focusing on the metrics. How do we do that? And then there's a pattern for that.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Thank you. Other questions? Olena and Alexander, you had some.
Olena's not here anymore.
Okay, Alexander.
And this was Alexander.
This was, okay.
I don't think
there's
two Alexanders.
There's two Alexanders in the chat. Oh, okay, thank you so much. So any other questions? Feel free to just say what's on your mind.
I have two.
Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, I have one too, but you go first.
Okay, thanks. So do you have any tips or suggestions on how to implement this if you don't have the mandate or the power? Like, if you're not in a team lead sort of role, but you still want to get things done in this way? Because in my experience, when I've tried this with teams when I'm not the leader or the product leader, it's always like, I get the feeling that people are, okay, he can do this. If he thinks this is fun, he can do this. He can try it if he wants to. And the problems are like at a higher level within the organization, that you try to get things moving, but the obstacles are above you, like in the organization?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a hard one, like to affect things that are over your level of influence, so to speak. I think one way to go is to just start doing the work, like talk to your team lead or your teammates and suggest this as a playful practice to try once. It goes back to the playful thing about in the mindset that it's like, this is not forever, just let's do it once and see what happens.
Exactly. And I think like building on what you're saying, you can influence on your own, kind of like for your own team members, even if you're not the team lead. Like you can think of, okay, like what is one small thing that I can suggest that's going to be an easy yes for our team to say yes to during. So for example, me and Victor were in a management team, and instead of like, oh, we have all these ideas of how we can run our meetings and how we can do this and do with that, we like a small thing was like, hey, you guys want to try doing a 1-sentence check-in and a 1-sentence checkout? And then the check-in, we talk about what's important today. And then the checkout, we say, what have we learned? And they take like, it'll only take 2 minutes. Is that fine? So finding those kind of like, what are the smallest things that people around you can say yes to? That's one thing. And then the second thing is that we like, one of the reasons that we're doing Fractal is because we really want to like empower the people, if that makes sense. Because there's so often so many people sitting out with all these great ideas low down in the organization. And the thing with Fractal is what management people like is results and seeing things work. So rather than going to management and say like, hey, should we try this? Like, what is one small thing you can start doing and then have it kind of spread like a virus instead, so that the management team's like, hey, that team is working well. What are they doing? And then you can share, oh, glad you asked. This is what we're doing. So that kind of Fractal approach as well, rather than again going to trying to tell the organization how they should be running or design, do the small thing and start doing it rather than talking about it. And I mean, so again, like what Victor said first, like it's really hard, but your question is like one of the reasons we created Fractal, because we see this tension.
Yeah, definitely. And a third way is to give us their email.
Yes, that's also
we'll gladly to help you and say why this works and pitch it for them. So that's a really good way to do it also.
Thanks. And my other question was, how do you have any suggestions how because I've tried this in my current team and I did it once, and the whole thing of what has worked well and what we can do better, it was so, I don't know the best English word for it, but it was so like cloudy and messy, and people could not get into like presenting a concrete explanation of what was not working. It was a lot of like, oh, I felt it was so messy last week and I couldn't get things done. It was all so stressful. But do you have any suggestions on how to make it something that's tangible, that you can actually improve?
Yeah. So what I do when I do this, when I facilitate this process, because it's always like you're saying, like the first they don't understand the questions and they write stuff that are not tangible. It's to take like that sentence that they wrote and ask like, okay, so on this one, what caused this? Like what's happening? So go back to like trying to slowly but surely get them to understand.
And again, he'd like not to strive for perfection. So like Victor say, like really coach them to find like one small thing that will make pretty much, it doesn't have to be the most perfect thing that will make the most impact, but something that probably will make a good impact. And to find that thing with coaching, like help them to find one thing and then do that, because then when people start experiencing like, oh, okay, when we changed this, it made it a lot better. Then through the experience, they'll start understanding what kind of things. So again, like start small and really just try to find like what's the one thing that can make a difference and that people understand.
Yeah, and to plug ourselves again, like this is an art form. It takes practice to be good at this and getting to the right things. So let us help you. Per, you had a question also.
Yes, I'm on a train, so I've been going in and out of tunnels here. but good timing. So yeah, I realized I've been running this, and I've been also trying to focus in on the simplicity of just having like a weekly loop, where on the Friday we do like something like a retro release of a question. And though it's become redundant, and the team kind of stopped feeling it was engaging. What did I do wrong?
You're breaking off a bit, but I think you asked that you're doing a version of this, but the team starts to feel that it's redundant and not working, and you're wondering what you're doing wrong. And to answer that,
Yes.
I think I need to see the process a bit more. Do you want to take a guess?
One guess could be this thing of like here where the code of conduct comes in as a really important thing to like have a clear common this what do you call it, like
decision, like to see like what are the processes and way of working that we actually have.
Yeah, because
a reason for conflict and frustration is a lot of the times that you're not on the same page. It's like a silly example is that some people show up at 9:30 and you're frustrated because you think that we need to be here at 9 and do the check-in. But if it's not clearly stated that we need to be here at 9, then this is a cause for frustration.
So it's both like about having clarity so that you actually can have accountability. That's like the foundation, but then also as the one leading it to help the team show the progress and the improvement. So then the code of conduct also helps that you saw that gift that wishing that is actually changing and shifting, so that basically what I'm trying to say, the thing that you choose to improve, that it actually has an impact on your and again, maybe it's also the fractal pattern that after when you've done it weekly, that we alluded to a little shortly, is that then you need to start to have a bi-monthly because this is exactly to your point, Pat, because then, okay, say you're doing these weekly sessions for, I don't know, 8 weeks, and then they start going down in energy. Then you do a bi-monthly and you do a fractal on the weekly retro. What can we do better with the weekly retro? And you get the whole team to engage in how can we do the retro better?
Yeah.
And that's
because one thing that we've seen that's really high impact is to simply show the team what's happened in the past 2 months, because in our world of business a lot happens and we do an immense amount of progress, but since we're always like on a tight schedule, we forget all the things that we've done. So just as the facilitator, you Per, take time to go through the past months and write down as a simple bullet list, everything that you achieved and accomplished, just to show the team that this is where we were, this is what we did, and this is where we are now. And doing that will definitely give them a sense of accomplishment and awe and wow.
And both on product and people focus in showing that.
And when they have that, then you can do the fractal questions on this bigger time period again. So seeing all this that we did in the past 8 weeks, like what do you think went well? And then they write that, and seeing that, what do you want to do better in the coming 8 weeks, and give them the prompt to think bigger, like not only in what I do every week, but like connect it to the goal, the mission of the company and the goal, and like where are we heading, where are we going, like so if you're doing on bi-monthly periods, like show the goal of this year or the goal of the launch that you're trying to build or whatever, like the big thing is, because you have a big thing, that's why you're there, right? So connect to that and then do the questions. I think that will show them.
That's good.
Yeah.
Did it answer your question?
I mean, yeah, definitely. And I'm getting flashbacks to it was a consulting company I worked for before. They did it really well, and I probably didn't understand it back then, but they had something that they did every 6 months called a sunset review, which is essentially what you just described. So you walk through kind of like a timeline of what you accomplished, in this case, month by month. Before, and that's the early part of kind of like the conference or whatever, and then you start moving into what's coming next and these type of things. And
Yep.
yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it's powerful, and it always works.
One last question. So regarding another issue or challenge I've seen when it comes to maybe making this a reality and make it work really well in sales and marketing, for example, or any other department than developers in tech, has been yeah, I mean the size of the thing you want to improve. So how long it takes before you see improvement, and in some cases, then I've tried to kind of build that down to before the next retro, before the next session, but the size of it should be small enough or sizable in a sense that you can accomplish it outside of your normal work time or outside of your ordinary tasks until the next time. Do you have any suggestions or learnings, or you've seen that you've been working more deliberately with these methods on how to think about that, the things that you improve, and how you make it something that actually happens?
One thing that like comes up in me is that like one thing that is very nice with tech is that you can make it into these small parts, and it has this, what you're asking for, it comes quite naturally, that you see, okay, we build this feature and then it builds onto this feature, and then and with like the more you come to the business side, as you say, it becomes more long-term, it becomes more intangible. But that's why I think also this kind of people and process maybe becomes even more important, that you can, if you can't really show the product side results because it's so long term, then there's still so much motivation in communication, collaboration, feeling better at work, feeling more energized. And I mean, that is kind of, the more intangible you get, the more kind of human, you could say, it also gets in what actually, it becomes a bit mysterious, why are we selling more? Well, our sales team was happier. Like that has a big impact on sales. So that, and I think that's why like Scrum and stuff doesn't really work for sales teams, because they, again, like it's developed by developers, or maybe are not, maybe I shouldn't say this on recording, but maybe not the best at the human side of skills, because they're really logic and great at tech. But actually, so this is like to really equally emphasize that the people and the process side of things is an equally measurable, or not measurable, but like something that you can feed back to. Did I understand your question correctly, Per?
Yeah, I'm basically asking for what instruction to give when people decide on the size of the task that they should improve. But then you're saying,
okay, maybe I didn't understand.
Yeah, I think so what you're asking is that when you're doing this retro, people come up with improvements and pain points that are too big to implement in the next week, and you're trying to find like, how can I prompt them to come up with things that are actually doable within the time frame, right? I think that's what you're asking. And then,
sorry, I lost you for 30 seconds, but I was in a tunnel. But yeah, you rephrased it well, I think.
Okay, good. So it's you can play with prompts, like how to, like when you're asking the questions, emphasize like, so what do you think is something that we could do like in this coming week? I would try to try different prompts and maybe suggestions too. Like if you have insights, you could come, like be in part of it, answer the question to yourself and suggest things, and maybe they will +1 and so that's right, this is what we need. So feel free to, like, as the facilitator or the leader, you can also suggest things, but then when you decide what to do, like make sure that it's you have a buy-in from the team with at least a few plus in, and that they're willing to try it. Like again, you can do this as a test. Okay, so even if it's something that at Footway, a lot of times we did things that some of the people didn't like. There's no, I've tried that before, it doesn't work, it's not a good idea. But we suggest it as a test, So okay, but what if we just? I think it's going to work, but what if we try it for 2 weeks, and then we can see if it didn't work or not, and we don't need to continue doing it if it didn't work. So again, try to help them get to the shorter time period, but also sometimes like things that need to change are on bigger time scales, and don't be afraid to find them too, and then set a later date for the reflection or look up if it worked or not. So try to find the bigger.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we've been using tool even for the whole company. We use a tool called retrotool.io or something. I'm sure if you heard about it. They have a free version that works quite well. The only thing that you don't get with it is like the harvesting part. You can save it for later, so you have to kind of screenshot or copy paste stuff. But well, digital meetings anyway.
That's good.
Thank you a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Excited to follow your journey, and I was early to comment on your post, Victor, so I hope that helps.
Thank you so much, Per. And I think we should wrap up there for this Q&A session too. So thank you everyone for spending time with us. This was fun.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
And please reach out if you want to try the Fractal Intensive.
Yes, do it.
Okay.
Bye everyone.